In spite of the increased oil and gas prices, it is still a lot cheaper than many renewables. But then you get the factor, how clean is it, the CO2? So then I come back to the climate. If you say, okay, let's now look at the fossil fuels. I agree with Rex. We think that in 20 years from now, the world will use more oil and more gas. So how can we make then a big dent in less CO2? And what would work very rapidly? That is if we can develop international frameworks, how to get CO2 into the ground, yeah? Or how we can use it for enhanced oil production. And that we have, so there's a whole field which can be done. And another thing which may work is that you say, okay, we like to drive cars, and that is what people like that, but the fuel efficiency standard, 10 years out, in the year 2020, should be as follows. So many miles to the gallon. And then a big step. And then there can't be any car sold below that. And then you will see Detroit will react, Germany will react, and it's all technology. And that will work. So setting standards with a long horizon when you have to meet that. And that will really help. It is not what we should do tomorrow. That is only marginal, incremental. So that is why the point of view of Shell is, let's work on international frameworks. Let's indicate what will work can rapidly. And then I think we can do a lot.
So the good news side of this rather bleak outlook on a scale is that there is enormous energy efficiency capacity in existence in the system today and under development that can make significant improvements to the way in which we use energy and still go about our normal economic activities. So I think first, my approach is we need to do the things we know how to do better. Energy efficiency, continue to develop the technologies that will allow us to become more efficient, and then develop the technologies required for things like we've talked about. Secretary Bodman mentioned carbon capture sequestration. Our industry knows a lot about putting CO2 back in the ground. We've been doing it for almost 50 years. Putting it in the ground is not the hard part. Separating it at the stack is hard. It's going to take technology breakthroughs to provide other alternates. All of that work needs to go underway. In terms of cap and trade programs, carbon taxes, I don't have an advocacy around any of those. The only point I would make is that clearly it's a global problem. 85% of future CO2 emissions growth is going to be in the developing world because that's where the fastest growing economies are. So you have to approach this on a global basis and recognize that these economies are going to grow. We're not going to keep these economies from growing. So solutions have to be global in nature. To the extent we can allow them to be market-based, that will result in the most efficient deployment of those programs. They need to be transparent so that there can be no gaming of the system. And they need to be flexible because, as I said earlier, whatever we think we know about this problem, the thing I can assure you is 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now, it won't turn out the way we thought.
And we take the view that we can combine our efforts of Russia and of Europe in order to increase the supplies of energy to Europe. And we also regard ourselves as a reliable stakeholder in this process. We must combine our efforts as exporters, as a transit country, and as consumers of energy. We have proposed, we continue to propose, to construct our mutual relations in such a way as to ensure that they become reliable and based on partnership, and they ensure a level of security of supply, of energy supply, which will guarantee the effective functioning of our states' economies.
The questions of the energy security is very important, even after all these discussions in St. Petersburg, and Mrs. Merkel confirmed that this topic will be continued during the presidency of Germany in the G8, because it's a lot of challenges in the energy security. A lot of technological issues on agenda, production capacity, refining capacity, transportation capacity, is it sufficient to meet demand or not? A lot of people telling, oh, let's diminish the dependence of Gazprom in gas supply. But based on the contract portfolio we have today, which is fully supported by our transit capacity through Ukraine and Belarus and Turkey, even if we will not sign any new contract, the dependence of Europe in gas supply from Russia will objectively grow up from 26 to 33%. It's a pure arithmetic result. It's not rocket science. And when we are seriously analyzing the calls to diminish the dependence, it's only one way to diminish it, to destroy the system of gas contracts which have been prepared and executed in the last 30 years. Another way is to diminish the role of gas in the European economy. But then the question arises, how competitive will Europe stay if the role of gas will be artificially diminished?
We are in the early stage of becoming a very significant oil-producing country. Therefore, for us, these potential dangers are a little bit premature. But at the same time, what we are trying to do to immediately to convert these oil wells into the human wells. And if you look at the economic performance of Azerbaijan, not only from the point of view of GDP growth, which is, by the way, is the highest in the world for 2 consecutive years. Last year it was 35% GDP growth, and in 2005, 26%. But most important is that for the last 3 years, when the oil development became very significant for our economy, the level of people who live in poverty declined from 49% to 20%. And during the last 3 years, 520,000 new jobs were created. And as you know, oil sector does not produce a lot of jobs. Most of them were created in non-oil sector.
The Chinese government trying to promote the development of renewable energy. And after effectiveness of the renewable energy law from the beginning of last year, there have very rapid development of the renewable energy. For example, the wind power generation capacity in last year almost doubled. And also they have large-scale hydropower station under construction. And of course, for those heavy polluters, either it's a power generator or industrial enterprises, they have relatively more and more strict about their emission control.
We've talked here about the tremendous growth in energy demand. In particular, electricity is a big part of that growth. With the 50% increase, I think that's what the number is over the next 20 years in electricity demand in the world, I see no alternative other than nuclear power as an emission-friendly source of electrical power. It has to be done in a fashion that is non-proliferating, as you point out or as you suggest. We in the United States have worked hard to develop a new generation of nuclear power plants. The nuclear power facilities that we have not had a new nuclear power plant in the United States in over 30 years.
Sam, could you speak a little closer to you?
We've not had a new nuclear power plant in over 30 years, and it's been an issue of concern, so we have been working to try to develop that. At the same time, we're working on an effort to generate more nuclear power in the world, but to do it in a fashion that is proliferating friendly, if you will.